Now, the subject of toxic masculinity was back in the press this week after a new ad campaign for Gillette caused some of the company's customers, and we've heard from a few of them this morning, threatening to boycott the razor manufacturer. In the promotional video, the company changed its classic, if not iconic, tagline, "The best a man can get," for "The best men can be."
Bullying.
The Me Too movement against sexual harassment.
Masculinity.
Is this the best a man can get? Is it making the same old excuses?
Boys will be boys.
Boys will be boys. Boys will be boys.
But something finally changed.
Allegations regarding sexual assault and sexual harassment.
And there will be no going back. Because we believe in the best in men.
So it's inspired by the Me Too movement. The commercial calls on men to do more to end bullying, sexism and sexual harassment. Critics have described it as feminist propaganda, but many have welcomed the change. Well, join me to discuss the advert, but more importantly, talk about toxic masculinity is Laurence Johns, the community director of the Mankind Project. Laurence, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
First of all, what did you make of the advert?
On some level, I really liked it, actually. I thought the message behind it, the message of accountability, responsibility, being positive role models, I think it's a really good message. I couldn't escape the irony of being told how to build a better future by a company that's core business seems to dump millions of tiny pieces of plastic into the ocean. But overall, I thought it was okay.
And what do you make of the protests of people saying that they are threatening to boycott the manufacturer?
Really, I don't see why. I can't personally see how it is an attack on masculinity in any way.
It's interesting because we had one text message about it earlier on saying that actually it was, and they went down the lines of race, about there were 4 or 5 white men who were all seen as bad and 4 or 3 other people who were all the do-gooders who were non-white and all of this kind of stuff. So the challenge, I suppose, for the ad in itself is that people will have different takes on it, no matter how clearly they think they have put across this message.
Exactly. It's very heavy-handed. I don't think it's a great bit of filmmaking in any way. I sort of cringe at parts.
Right.
And there's bits of it that I think, like the kind of that they put, kind of 2 boys having a fight alongside kind of sexual abuse in the Me Too campaign. Making stuff like that very similar, and some of that's dangerous. And I also think, how they're doing it is a heavy-handed approach to what they're doing. But I think the basic message of let's hold ourselves accountable, let's hold ourselves to a better version of ourselves, I think it's largely positive.
And the idea of toxic masculinity now is under increasing scrutiny, certainly over the past few years. Has it got any better?
Well, I think the meaning of it seems to have changed slightly in some people's minds. My understanding of it when it first came out was that there was a model of masculinity that if we tried to fit into was damaging to men and damaging to the world at large. But some people seem to be taking that on as the idea of that somehow being masculine is toxic. And I think that's where some of the confusion comes out. And I think that's where some people's kind of defences come up whenever it's kind of mentioned. But I think something like this, if you break down the basis of this advert, it means even if it's being cynical, even if they're cynically trying to sell razor blades, which clearly they are, that's their job, and they've done it really well. They've got an advert on BBC this morning. They're doing well. But even if you strip all of that away, they must think on some level that there's a big enough change going on with men that this would be appealing.
Yeah.
And that has to be, even if it is heavy-handed, it's got to be a huge leap forward from, have a square jaw and a fit torso and a fast car, and women are going to throw themselves at your feet.
What, in your opinion, defines a man nowadays? I.e., what is a good man?
different for each man, and I think.
Oh, sorry, the phone just went very funny there. Are you still there?
Can you hear me?
Yes,
Can you hear me?
yes. What
Okay.
defines a good man? Yeah.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's different for each man, and I think that's the point of this. Was the idea of toxic masculinity? There was one model, and as we've learned from other stuff, it's much more intersectional than that. So you can't really prescribe what being a good man is, but you just have to open it up so that there's freedom for people to choose, what's right for them, and certain values, that we know as human values, are just treat each other kindly, don't impose, allow space for others. And so I think it's about allowing a space where young men can grow and can be emotionally connected so that they can be happier. I don't think it's necessarily better, because that's kind of hard to quantify. But it's allowing a space where we can grow into men that don't feel they have to be in competition with the whole world and isolated from the rest of the world to be successful.
How do you think maleness has changed in the light of the growing feminism, if you like?
Well, I think there's a bigger pressure on men to clean up their side of the street.
Yeah.
But I think that's a massively positive thing. I personally am not. I'm very involved in the men's movement, but I don't come from the angle that others getting more freedom is an attack on us. I think it's an and also. Let's be freer and better together. Let's just make the world a better place by working with each other. Just someone else getting more equality is not an attack on me.
But do you think there's an age thing as well, that the older you are, the less or the more rigid you will be in your ways, and therefore that's part of the reason why this advert and other things, that initiatives like you guys are doing, may not necessarily be as welcome?
I don't know if it's necessarily age. I mean, within the Mankind Project, actually, we've got a lot of a very active elder community embracing change in their lives and trying to push that forward with older men. So I don't think it's necessarily age. I just think there might be a point in your life where kind of things become more of a threat, and change might be just you might just be slightly more resistant, but I don't necessarily think it's an age thing.
Thank you ever so much for joining us this morning. That's Laurence Johns, the Community Director of the Mankind Project.